The Basketball Hall of Fame 60 Days of Summer is your chance to see your favorite basketball stars live and in person. Check hoophall.com for a complete list of all these exciting appearances and plan your trip today.
I want to talk, we have so much to get to today, and thank you for joining us the 60 Days of Summer here in Springfield. Your position as, we'll talk about your career, your development, your roots up in Amherst, all of that. But your position as an ambassador to this game that we love so much has been so important as we've watched it develop since you left in the mid-late 80s and through into this century. So before we get into your career and development of the game, can you just give us a couple of words on the way this game has been chaperoned into the 21st century, what you love so much about it still?
I think I can. I am still doing a little bit of ambassadorial work, if you want to call it work. You know, one thing about the sport of basketball, and one thing that I've always loved about it, is that, you know, if you're good enough, you can probably get paid for something that you would be doing for free if you weren't doing it for dinero. So I hesitate sometimes when people call it work.
Sure.
Because I've always enjoyed the game, loved the game, and played for the fun of the game.
And we're all better people because of that.
Well, thank you, thank you. Most recently, I was on a trip to Tokyo, Japan, and I went as an ambassador for the NBA, and I was invited to judge a slam dunk contest. And I told a story recently, as a matter of fact, at lunch with Fran and Barry a little while ago, that when I was asked to judge it, I was like, go figure, why would they ask me to judge a slam dunk contest, you know? I mean, of all the people in the world. But it was fun. We had fun over there. We were able to represent the sport, a little bit of the history of the sport.
Sure.
And obviously as a former player who's still rocking the Converse.
Love that.
Represent, you know, one or more of the things that are associated with it. And there's so many levels to the game and so many places where you can land if you just elect to participate.
Sure.
You know, so, you know, as I look around the room, I mean, I see some people with some real good potential. You know, they look like they have big hands, big feet, a little bit of height, you know, sleek and whatever. So, you know, it might be good players one day, but most of the people in the room probably won't be good players one day. But there are other positions to land other than as a player. And you know what they are. I mean, obviously coaching.
Sure.
Training. Spectating, announcing.
Yes, sir.
Talking about it, you know, being one of the talking heads.
Is that safe to say you looked at me?
With the sport. I just looked at you and
you knew.
I just thought that you talked a good game.
Yes, sir. My wife can attest to that.
Okay.
So, Doc, a couple nights ago, you were out at an Allen Iverson fundraiser, and it's so great because you're a New York guy, you spent some time in Mass, played in Virginia, played in Atlanta, played all over the world. But at the end of the day, Philadelphia has become home for you. Can you talk to us about watching superstars of the generation after you, the guys like Allen Iverson who are now transitioning into ambassadorship? Is that one of the joys of being where you are in the game right now, is being able to help the next generation come through to helping the subsequent generation?
It's an interesting progression. And, you know, I went to UMass, so right down the road in Amherst. That was my college. And I left after my junior year and turned pro. But I made sure that I went back and I got my degree from UMass because I had promised my mother I would graduate from college. And it took a few years, but I did get my degree. And one of the things I think about when I talk about education and I talk about the progression, the educational process and progressing through the educational process, is that I went from being a person who was mentored And, seemingly always had like an older friend or a father figure or my mom, who I looked at as being my mentor.
Sure.
And then as I grew and I developed and I became a better player and became a leader of a team, leader in the community, I found that the role reversed. Instead of being mentored to, I was mentoring to others who were coming up behind me. And it wasn't that I was doing it consciously. It was something that just happened.
Right.
And so therefore I felt it was part of my personal, natural evolution. And I found out that a lot of things work that way. And at age 66, now, can consider myself like an old school warrior or whatever, who probably, does not have the mentor out there. Maybe Bill Russell could be considered that, because he's been a lifelong friend and
yes, sir.
Extended the hand of friendship to me back when I was 19 years old as a, sophomore on the campus at UMass. So, so he still occupies that position in my life. But most of the people that I deal with, I'm a mentor for them.
Sure.
Whether it's my nephew, my children, or just, the Allen Iversons of the world, the young players who are coming up, who once you're in their presence, you see a different side of them than what the public sees, because there is, maybe a little bit of reverence regarding, being older and being more experienced, and them still yet to have the experiences that I've already gone through.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers your question.
It certainly does. And actually, Doc, let me ask, because you heard the swell of applause when you mentioned UMass. I know there's a number of UMass alumni, friends here. Doc, so Jack Leman is a name that means so much to all of us of a certain vintage who remember just what Jack Leman means to UMass athletics. Can you talk about his mentorship, your coach at UMass, and throughout your professional career? What did Coach Leman mean to you?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because it's so important to preserve the memory of special people.
Sure.
And you should preserve the memory of all people if you can, and elect to. But special people like Jack, who was such a giver, and the reason, there were two reasons why I went to UMass. One was Ray Wilson, and the other was Jack Leman. And Ray Wilson was my high school coach, and Ray's no longer with us, and neither is Jack. But they will always occupy this special place in my heart. They were teammates at Boston University, and when I was a senior in college, I came to visit UMass, and I just kind of fell in love with the campus and the school and the atmosphere, and the fact that these two guys had such a caring and trusting relationship with one another.
Sure.
That I knew if I went to UMass that I would be in good hands, and being delivered pretty much out of Ray's hands into Jack's hands. So when people ask me why I went to UMass, I could think of 1,001 reasons, but the main reason was the relationship between those two. I wanted to have something like that, and I became a beneficiary of them having that great relationship. And Jack, in my freshman year, he used to take me around to luncheons that were being put together in and around Amherst, and really pretty much between the Western Mass.
Sure.
It was kind of like his territory. He left BC and BU and Harvard to Eastern Mass, but he had Western Mass covered.
The important part of the state.
Yeah, he had the important part of the state covered, right? So, he would take me to these luncheons, and he would always make me speak, and because he would introduce me. And he said, well, I'm going to have him say a few words. And it made me feel comfortable with the microphone, and, at a very young age, comfortable in front of an audience.
Sure.
Of fans, spectators, critics, media, or what have you. And that's made a huge difference. That made a huge difference in my career.
And it's funny because you talk about playing in front of fans and critics. And while you cut your teeth on the whole 5-on-5 organized Jack Leman ball up the road, 155th. You know where I'm going. And Frederick Douglass in Harlem is where Rucker Park was. If you want to talk about cutting your teeth on the other side of basketball, we were just out there in the concourse, and one of the Hoop Hall employees was talking about having seen you play at Rucker Park.
That was Ray out there.
Ray, yeah.
Ray.
Pee Wee Kirkland, one-on-one.
He was out there with Junebug.
And I'm wondering what that was like for 19, 20-year-old Julius Erving. You had already wowed the fans on so many organized levels the first time you laced it up at Rucker, knowing you were playing against current NBA guys, knowing you were one in a long line of guys trying to really earn your keep on the most legendary basketball court known to man.
What's the question?
What was it?
Only kidding. No, I got you. Actually, the first time I played in Rucker Park was after I finished my 3 years at UMass, and after I had signed a contract with the Virginia Squires, because it was a pro league. And I never played in the non-pro league. I always played my recreation ball in and around Long Island, where I grew up. And we had good games, and we would barnstorm a little bit, and sometimes we'd get in the car, we'd go over to Queens, we'd go to Brooklyn, Bronx, Manhattan, Staten Island, and look for games. And but the first time I went to Rucker Park, I mean, I had already signed a contract as a pro. I was with the Virginia Squires, and one of my teammates was Charlie Scott, the great Charlie Scott. And we entered a team in the Rucker League, and Pete Vesey, you know, of the New York Post fame, was our coach. And we had some of the players from the Nets, some of the players from the Squires, and then a couple of players who, you know, didn't play with any pro teams, but who were finished with their college eligibility and capable of being pros. Two guys, Georgie Bruns, I remember him, and Billy Schaefer, who graduated from St. John's and was with the Nets. So in going to that park, I mean, it was very enlightening. You know, it was a step and a half away from organized basketball. I still think, because, you know, we'd go out there and we'd have 2 or 3 guys who would score 40, 50, or 60 points in a game, and I just knew the guy with the clock was doing something funny. Because those quarters would be so long. I mean, the game would take like, you know, hour and a half. It was supposed to be like a 48-minute game, right? So I knew there were maneuvers with the clock, and when you hear these stories of Rucker League and guys scoring 80, 90 points,
they had 8 hours.
It's a long game.
It's like a season.
Long game. It's like a whole summer, right? So there's something different about playground basketball, and there's something. There's a freedom. It's time to be uninhibited. To, you know, try things that you might not try, you know, when you have your high school coach or your middle school coach or junior high coach or even your AAU coach. And at that time, you know, there were penalties for making mistakes and when you played organized ball. And I played organized ball from my Salvation Army youth days, probably from age 10 or 11, you know, to age 13 or 14. And I remember when I was inducted into the Naismith Memorial Hall of Fame, you know, they asked me what I wanted to put up behind me. And I said, I want you to put the Salvation Army flag and banner up there behind me.
Yeah.
And I want to have my coach with me, a guy named Don Ryan, who was, when he was coaching me, he was 19. And he's still coaching.
Is he?
Salvation Army youth basketball.
Awesome.
They call his team the Hempstead Dons. And I'm 66, so he's 74.
It's still coaching.
And he's still coaching the kids, and he brings them down. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, so he brings them down every year during the Easter holidays, and we play a Julius Erving round-robin tournament with teams in Atlanta. And he used to bring his kids down. I'm getting a little off the track, but I'm just sharing some information.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Please do.
He brings the kids down. You know, they hire a bus. They play all the way down from Long Island to Atlanta, and then they stay and they visit the King Center, and they go out to the Six Flags Park, and I might have them at my home, just have a dinner. And
they get a full U.S. history trip. This is a trip about.
It's a trip for these kids every year.
Yeah,
and then they play all the way back.
That's great.
So at the end of the season, they might play 40 to 50 games. At the end of their basketball season, and this is youth basketball at its best.
Yeah.
But it's very organized, and the same guy who taught me, and Archie Rogers, Al Williams, people who I talk about in my autobiography.
Great book, 2013.
He's still teaching these kids, so he's a godsend.
Yeah,
He's a godsend, and just to segue back over to Rucker League, there was that youth basketball and being in a program, and then there was obviously high school and college, and learning a lot of the intricacies of the game, and the nuances of the game, and being superfluously organized, and then the freedom of getting into the pros, and especially the pro summer leagues. Because in the pro summer leagues, it was like, you need to put on a show.
Yeah.
You need to put on a show, get your street creds. It was always some guy they were talking about, Earl Manigault or Pee Wee Kirkland or Joe Hammond. And there was always guys that they were talking about, and how great they were, but they were neighborhood legends, and they were heroes.
But you were one of those guys.
So I got adopted, when I went there, and I kept telling people, look, I'm just, country bumpkin from over in Long Island. I really don't belong here, but I'm going to act like I belong here. and we had fun with it.
And it's amazing because the story about, you bring up Atlanta, and the story from that 2013 autobiography, it's a must read for anyone. Talk about a civics lesson as well, a history of the late 20th century through Dr. J's eyes, is the story of that nickname. And it has kind of Atlanta roots. The guy who, high school friend of yours, gave you that nickname, lives in Atlanta now.
Yeah.
But I'm also curious about that moment you decide to walk up to the announcer at Rucker Park, because they were running through a bunch of nicknames for you. The Claw. What were some other Black Moses?
They call me Black Moses. They call me the Claw. They call me Little Hawk.
What's already taken?
Connie Hawkins. And because I was just playing the game, and I would do a lot of things with one hand. And, peekaboo style with the ball, and whatever's his guy. He's announcing every play of the game, and even when we're not playing, he's still announcing. So the announcer was like a constant. You would constantly hear this guy on a microphone when you're playing out in the playground, and he's really just talking to the crowd and having fun. And now they do it. They still do it. I mean, at Allen Iverson's event, they had two guys who were constantly talking during the game, explaining what was going on. Even though you're sitting there and you're watching what's going on, they were just giving you like it's almost a radio broadcast of what's going on. So he gave me several nicknames, none that I could identify with. So I did walk over to him and said, if you're gonna call me anything, just call me the doctor, because that's the nickname that I've had, since junior high school. And I got it from a buddy who I call a professor, and he called me the doctor. And this is one of my golf buddies now, and one of my golf nemesis.
Is he?
And we still enjoy the fact that we labeled one another with nicknames that stuck.
Yeah. Not just stuck, became part of the culture, part of the lexicon.
Okay.
Love that.
I'll buy that.
I want to let y'all know, in about 10 minutes, we are going to select 4 lucky fans sitting out there to ask Dr. J a question. So now's the time to start thinking about something you've always wanted to ask the doctor. There's a doctor's visit. No copay. Yeah. All you have to do is just raise your hand in about 10 minutes, and one of the great Hoop Hall staffers will come and select 4 of y'all. Yeah,
and let me just say that I'm really appreciative of everyone that's here. You could be other places, but you're here at the Hall of Fame, and there's so many wonderful things to see and do here. And the fact that you've come out on this day, and I'm not looking at empty bleachers or whatever, I feel good about that. So thank you for being here.
Yeah. So, Doc, your decision to leave UMass early, obviously there's a number of reasons behind that, and it's, we'd have to go all the way back to the 70s. I'm wondering how much of that was you felt an innate responsibility to your family, who, you were really the man of the house from about 3 years old on. And as a father of a 4 and a 6-year-old, I can understand the gravity of that.
Yeah.
And how much of it was also you wanting to prove yourself on the next level as much as humanly possible?
Well, it was more of a 60-40 in that regard. I think the economics and the fact that, I grew up in a household where my mother and father divorced at 3 and then my father died at 9. So I was a man of the house at a very early age, the oldest boy anyway, far from being the man of the house.
Sure.
But I was, 20, 21 at the time, and I consider myself to be a student athlete, and when I got the offer to turn pro, I think I became an athlete student.
Yeah.
But before that, I had always taken my academics very seriously, and my goals. And I didn't realize, I didn't know what would happen when I became pro. I mean, it wasn't like I was, super confident and believed that I was all that and I was going to be the best that there ever was. I actually went to an Olympic development camp after my sophomore year, and I sat around with a lot of guys while we were in Colorado Springs, and they would start telling stories about what they were going to do in the pros and what they were going to become and so on and so forth. And that was a little bit of a foreign conversation to me because I just wasn't wired that way. I was kind of wired more in the present rather than in the future. And then we went out and we played, and we actually went on a tour of Russia, Poland, and Finland. And all the guys were freshmen and sophomores in college. So I led the team in scoring and rebounding. And we had like 2 7-footers on the team. And we had Cyril Baptiste from Creighton and Joby Wright from Indiana. We had Tom McMillan from Maryland, Paul Westphal from USC. So we had these guys, from big programs. And I was from, little UMass. And I was selected as an alternate. Actually, the sport coat that they gave me was like a 46 long, so it definitely was for somebody else. I was like a 42 long. And then when they put this jacket on, I was like, this is definitely somebody else's jacket. Y'all gonna have to taper this down. And then we didn't realize our leading scorer and rebounder was gonna be a little guy.
Yeah.
Little by those standards because of the 7-footers that we had. So I should have known something at that time, but still, I guess I wouldn't let my ego take me beyond. And until my first pro game, which was in the ABA, and I think I talk about it in the book. I said, I know I can rebound the ball because I'm like a human jumping jack.
Yes.
And that was what I did in college. I averaged better than 20 rebounds a game, night in, night out, and used to throw in 26, 27 points a game, which was the bonus.
It's a nice bonus.
Yeah, it was a nice bonus to be able to score. So I said, I don't know if I can score in the pros, but I know I can rebound. And in my first pro game, I had 21 rebounds and 22 points.
It's not a bad debut.
So that kind of established things that I did belong and that it was the right move.
And you play a handful of years in the ABA until it folds. You went 5 years. You get
5 years.
Actually, literally a handful. 5 years.
Yeah.
Pick up, no big deal, a couple of titles along the way, right? Just all in a day's work.
Yeah.
On the night when the ABA folds, when the merger happens.
Right.
What kind of were the players? Was there history shows now it works out beautifully, but were players worried because there were going to be, especially superstars like you, because there were going to be just fewer jobs for players in the country?
Yeah, I think the players who were involved with the association were very concerned about it being total merger
Indeed.
of the two leagues. You know, no soldier being left behind, and as it turned out, there were some that were left behind, and you know, with the absorption of the 4 teams,
Yeah.
who were the Spurs and the Pacers, the Nuggets, and the Nets. There were 3 other teams that didn't make it, and so it's 12 players on each team, so like 36 jobs, and the majority of those players got dispersed throughout the NBA. And you know, this conversation is, you know, for kids you don't know because this was back in the 70s, but it is part of basketball history.
Indeed.
And that's, you know, you're in the home of the place that preserves and shares basketball history.
Right.
So you can look it up.
Indeed.
And but if you have somebody who can talk about it, who lived it, and who knows it, that should be an extra bonus.
It should be, and this is what a great resource.
So there was mixed emotions.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of angst associated with the merger of the ABA and the NBA, and would the ABA's legacy be preserved? And sadly, I think the NBA does not work hard enough to preserve the legacy of the ABA, and is very
Agreed.
self-serving in terms of, like, lots of times I'll sit and I'll watch TV, and you know, they'll talk about something that being done for the first time. It's never happened before, and you know, there were a lot of things that happened prior to 1992 that just don't get talked about.
Yeah.
And you know, prior to the Michael Jordan era, that just don't get talked about. And you know, the Oscar Robertsons, Bill Russells of the world, the Elgin Baylor, who happened to be my favorite player all time, the Jerry Wests of the world, and obviously the Big Dipper, Wilt Chamberlain. I mean, I think with those 5 guys, that's like my all-time best 5. And you know, I decided that when I was 14 or 15 years old, so I'm just sticking to my guns.
Yeah, no one's gonna knock Doc off his spot.
They not knocked me off my 5. I mean, they said the doctor's delusional. 'Cause who are those 5 guys? Well, they're here.
Yes, they are.
They're here, and they deserve to be here, and they deserve to be recognized for laying down the foundation that is making a lot of money for the NBA and for a lot of players today.
I have 3 questions left, so now's the time to really get those questions rolling for you. Get ready to raise your hand to be recognized. 1980, well, you know what? I'll let the Celtic fans remember this. Remember the Beat LA chant? Of course, the Beat LA chant. I want to talk about those early 80s with those Sixers, and I want to talk about it from a Celtic Sixers perspective. Y'all couldn't get out of each other's way for a time. When that Beat LA chant rings out in the Garden after you beat the Celtics in Game 7 to advance to play the Lakers in the finals, can you talk to us and talk to me about what that was like as the leader of that immortal Sixers team, hearing a very tough crowd, the Boston Celtic fans, get behind you and almost send you off with a blessing? What was that like?
You're gonna make me cry.
Me too.
So it really started in '77, first year after the merger, and the Nets win the ABA championship in '76, and the Celtics win the NBA championship in '76. And I go to Philadelphia, and who do we play in the first round of the playoffs? The defending champion Boston Celtics. And this is a Sixer team that has 3 former ABA players, George McGinnis, Caldwell Jones, and myself, and is kind of a renegade team, needless to say, a team that was, you know, like they used to talk about the Yankees buying a championship, and what are Sixers trying to buy a championship because they got Julius Erving and George McGinnis and you know, 2 former All-Pro ABA players. So we play the Celtics, and the series goes to 7 games, and we eliminate the Celtics. And so now we beat the defending champions of the NBA.
First round.
Sign of good things to come. Wrong. We actually go all the way through the NBA playoffs and make it to the finals and go up 2-0 on Portland. And Portland comes back, wins the next 4 games. So that started the series of we owe you one, right? Forward fast to 81, 82. Actually, 80, 82, 83. So the Sixers are in the playoffs 3 of those 4 years. And, we played Los Angeles, lose to them in 6 games. And then the next year, Philly, Boston, rivalry is great. We play a 7-game playoff series, and Philly was up 3-1. Boston comes back and wins the 7th game in Boston because they had home court advantage. And then they go on to beat the Houston Rockets and win the NBA championship, first of 3 that they win in the 90s. The next year, records are identical, and Boston wins the tiebreaker, so they have the home court advantage. And we go in and get a split, come back, win 2, and then both teams win on their home court. We win 2, so we're up 3-1. And then they win the next 2 games, so it's 3-3. Now we have a 7th game in Boston for the 2nd year in a row. Basketball, the Eastern Conference versus the Western Conference, it was always the Lakers are breezing through the Western Conference, except for Portland's year and Houston's year. So the Western Conference is deemed to be easier. The Eastern Conference, nuts and bolts, grit and grind. Who's going to get hurt?
Yeah.
Because when you went to the hole, if you didn't go to the hole with enough soul, whatever, you're going to end up flat on your back and maybe carried out in a stretcher, So it was a lot more physical in the Eastern Conference, and everybody acknowledged that. And between Milwaukee, Boston, and Philly, those teams were the most physical of all, with Bob Lanier, Marcus Johnson in Milwaukee. And obviously Boston's front line with McHale, Parrish, and Bird. And then we had Darryl Dawkins, Caldwell Jones, and a couple of enforcers on our team. So we get to this 7th game, and it's 1982. And we've been to the finals 2 of the previous 3 years. We go to Boston, and somehow, some way, we end up seizing control of the game, and now, it's like a 16 or an 18-point lead. We're in the 4th quarter, and we're winning this game going away in Boston, 7th game, and the fans in Boston start saying, "Beat L.A." Beat L.A.
Getting chills thinking about it.
I just got a chill when I just said it, because you reminded me of it, and really, it was one of the most emotional things that ever happened during my basketball career, because it was usually some other things said when we went into Boston Garden, the least of which was beat another team.
Same number of letters in the first word.
Exactly. But it was almost as if that was our championship there, overcoming that situation. And then we go and we play LA, and we lose in 6 games.
You got them next year.
We lose in 6 games. But we swept them the next year.
We
went and got Big Mo and beat LA in the sweep, and that was true vindication.
Special. Absolutely special.
Yeah, it was real special.
Speaking of special, now's the time. If you have a question for the doctor, you may raise your hand, and one of our great Hoop Hall staffers is going to recognize you. 4 lucky fans, and put them over here or over there to ask the question. Doc, my last question to you is this.
All right.
You are looking down on us from the class of 1993.
Yeah.
You come back to Massachusetts a couple times a year, traveling man. Important to this game we love so much. What is it like to be sitting here on this court today, talking to these fans underneath all of these eyes at the Basketball Hall of Fame today?
Yeah, it's amazing, Kyle. I've been here on this particular court a number of times. I was asked to escort Dominique Wilkins in, and Ralph Sampson in, Clyde Drexler, George Gervin. I was brought in by Billy Cunningham, And this year, Allen Iverson and Shaquille O'Neal both asked me to stand for them. So it's an honor just to be looked at, by those who have come after you, who want you to be there for them.
Indeed.
That's a statement unto itself. And to be here with the, was it 400 now?
It is.
Maybe about 400, brethren. You're in a special place. It's almost like if you're a golfer going to Augusta, and whether you play or not, it doesn't matter. It's like hallowed ground that has been set aside and reserved to preserve the memory and the memories and of the game and the people who are the great contributors to the sport of basketball on and off the court, because the Hall of Fame really is about those who have recognized and understood during their time associated with the game that there's a very, very high standard that needs to be adhered to at all times.
Yes.
And it's not just on the court as a player. So there are ways to get here. There are varied ways to get here, but you only get here if you're amongst the best at giving to the game and being a using the word contributor in the broadest sense.
Sure.
And in the best sense, that you're making a valuable and invaluable contribution to the game of basketball.
Before we get to our fan questions, one round of applause for Dr. Julius Erving. Let's see what the lucky four have for us, Doc. Here's the only request I have, sir. You let me hold the mic, and you can introduce yourself to the doctor and then ask your question.
Hi, I'm Sean Lee, and I wanted to ask, how hard was it to jump from the free throw line?
Sean Lee. All right, you probably look like you could do it. He said, how hard was it to jump from the free throw line? Well, if you look at the free throw line over my gentleman over there in the blue, and then you look at the basket right there, it's at least 15 feet, right? So 15 feet that way and 10 feet that way. So when you see the record in the long jump is like 29, 2.5. It used to be 29, 2.5 feet. So the farthest anybody has jumped, what is that, perpendicular right there? Yes. Yeah, that way, and vertically is that way, is twice that distance. So that says a lot. That says a lot. So it makes this seem very, very possible if you only have to jump half the distance of the longest broad jump. Yeah. But you got to go at least 10 feet up in the air. Now, don't just go 10, because you'll end up on the front of the rim. The ball could end up on the front of the rim. You could end up on your back. So you probably got to go like 11 or 12 up and 15 out. And I don't know, I was a spokesman for Converse for many, many years, and I used to always end my clinics with, running in from half court and jumping from the foul line and dunking the ball and then going out the door.
Ooh.
That was a way to say goodbye.
That's a great mic drop.
Yeah, because if you stuck around, they want you to do it again. and that clearly is a one and done shot. After you do it once, you ain't trying to do it again. But it took a lot of hops, a lot of confidence, and knowing how to land. Because you're not going to jump up there and out there if you don't know how to land.
Yeah, that's true.
If you got bad landing skills, you're not going to do that. Your mind is not going to let your body do it. Because the mind will be saying, okay, I can get up there, and the body's like, yeah, I can get up there, I'm all ready, I'm energized. And then the brain is saying, but you don't know how to land. So we ain't letting you do that. So you got to get your landing skills down pat too.
Thank you,
okay?
Sean.
Appreciate your question.
Legend is that one time a year you still dunk. One day a year. Is that true?
Up until age 64.
Okay.
So the last 2 years, I haven't tried.
Haven't tried?
I haven't tried, and it's come up a couple times
Has
this
it?
year, and so.
Let me know when that day shows up, because I'll fly to Atlanta.
Yeah, all right. We might do it again. Might have to adjust that basket a little bit.
Hey, buddy, what's your name and what's your question for the doc?
My name is Sam, and my question is, do you consider yourself as one of the all-time greats?
Okay, Sam. I'll tell you what.
Bring in the heat.
I'll tell you what. My modesty says, to hell with modesty. I think I should be in the discussion.
Yeah. Thanks, Sam. It's funny. I think I'm going to credit you with modesty because you didn't put yourself in your all-time top 5. You're in everyone else's I've ever heard. So, hey, buddy, what's your name? What's your question?
My name is Max, and my question is, have you ever been nervous playing?
I'm nervous right now. But see, I have a good way of masking the nervousness, and I think that's probably what happens on the court. And a lot of it had to do with, as I went back to talked about my college days when the coach would make me speak in front of audiences or whatever. And, before you get started, it's okay to be nervous. You just don't want to be nervous after you start. So nervousness and jitters and stage fright, all of the things that they call it, before the light goes on, before the curtain opens, before the center tap goes up, that's natural. That's natural, and you should get used to it. You should actually crave it. And Bill Russell used to always talk about throwing up in the bathroom before going out. And, Red Auerbach, he'd always ask him, did you throw up yet? He's like, no, we'll go in and throw up because you play a whole lot better after you throw up. Yeah, that's a natural thing for people to be a little antsy, jittery, nervous, or whatever before the act. And it's so much better than starting to play and then getting nervous.
Indeed.
And forgetting what the plays are and forgetting why you're really there.
Thanks, Sam.
So, yes, I've been nervous. Thank
All
you.
right, let's bring in the closer, Doc. Here comes the closer.
All right.
Well, we got one more after this. All right, here we go. We're in the 8th inning.
Hi, my name's Matthew Harris. Huge fan. Huge fan.
Thank you.
My question was, who do you have in the championship next year?
Okay, Matthew Harris, huge fan. Good-looking guy.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, there he goes. I think it's going to be Cleveland and Golden State for the third time. But San Antonio has something to say about it. Atlanta is going to have something to say about it with Dwight going there. I think it's going to be a much better fit for him. The Knicks are going to make the playoffs for all you Knicks fans.
I knew that would get an applause.
Chicago is going to have something to say about it, and Toronto is going to have something to say about it. Again, but I think ultimately, at the end of the day, the Warriors and the Cavs, they're the ones that are going to be there. I'm not going to make a prediction on who's going to win, because when teams play it, we've been there where, you play the longer season, because, from training camp to the last game of the season, when you do that a couple years in a row, and you do it 3 out of 4, 2 out of 3, whatever, there's more taxation on your body. Now we got the Olympics too, so some of the players from both teams are playing in the Olympics, whatever. The physical toll, it is what it is. So that's going to open the door for somebody else. So whoever can overcome the physical taxation, physical toll, not have, that injury to a key player, they're going to have a huge advantage. So let's watch it and see what happens, and let's pray that both teams are healthy.
Thank you, Matthew Harris.
Thank you.
All right, is that it? We're all right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Please give one final round of applause for Dr. J.